In what will come as a shock to many viewers of the channel, and to the left more broadly, we have been proven correct yet again, and that because Keir Starmer has literally nothing planned to deal with the multi-crises that this country has, nothing radical to reshape society for the better, because he has no actual political opinions, he has no vision, he hasn't got anything. He's just somebody who's been thrown into the role of Prime Minister because he was approached by Labour Together and said that he was their guy, with no desire to be there in the first place and no plan at all. He'll become the most hated man in Britain. James Schneider pointed this out on LBC earlier on this year.
Standards have been falling, and not really just for this parliament. We have now almost 2 decades of falling living standards for large sections of the population. And the macro is really bad. Geopolitical crises and stress, climate breakdown, rising costs, deglobalisation. The outlook is not good. And Labour's current plan, which is to say we'll grow the economy, how, not a word, is a recipe for Keir Starmer being the most hated man in Britain by the end of the parliament. So I don't think it will be the left that removes him. I think that unless Labour develop some actual policies to deal with the many crises that we face that are bold and big, then the government will have a big mandate, will do nothing, and will be seen as a failure.
And his approval rating is like minus 30%. Rachel Reeves is even worse, because they haven't got a plan. They've been spent 4 years in opposition. They had 4 years to come up with a plan. They've come up with nothing. They spent 4 years purging the left, though, right? They spent 4 years infighting with people who disagree with them within the party. They spent 4 years trying to market themselves as the Labour Party of BlackRock, and they've got into government and they've done nothing, apart from, I guess, renationalise the railways, but that's going to happen over time as the franchise agreements expire. Having run on a mandate of change, with change everywhere on every single piece of campaign material, and they're offering the same paint-by-numbers managerial centrism, and people are rejecting it. And this is a good article here from Bloomberg about the questioning internally within the party about what the hell they're going to do to try and claw back what should be their honeymoon period in government that's been mired in so much turmoil, so much poor coverage, so much political ineptitude from the natural party of government that Morgan McSweeney thinks he's going to create, to the point at which they're now polling behind Reform UK in 3rd place. Keir Starmer is facing calls from across his Labour Party for bolder policies and sharper messaging to connect with voters after a major speech aimed at rebooting his stuttering UK premiership flop this week. Yeah, because he just had 10 milestones to go along with 5 missions and 6 first steps and 3 shifts and 10 pledges, all of which have been ditched by the wayside because the man is, again, got no way of connecting with the people. The man's a charisma vacuum. The Prime Minister is not serious. Indeed, Jim Speak, the Prime Minister is not serious. And it's unsurprising that people who really want to be invigorated by a government, they want to know that there's a plan to fix the country, and they are receiving numbers that they don't quite understand, that don't really cut through. They had a previous mission goal that wasn't particularly rooted in people's material conditions. There's no broad-scale plan to change the paradigms that were inherited by the Labour Party, keeping things the same but slowly tweaking things around the edges. And this is a time of political and economic turmoil where clipping around the edges is not going to cut it. And Nigel Farage is waiting in the wings with an actual radical plan, but obviously radical for the worse. We've seen what's happened in America, and it's going to happen here. He's only serious about looking serious. Yeah, exactly. It's all about aesthetics. None of it's actually about content. The Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, are drawing growing criticism of what ministers, aides and lawmakers privately described as a disappointing 5 months in office. Starmer's a reset moment on Thursday, including 6 milestones designed to be used to measure the government's progress, triggered more disquiet and confusion about his strategy. Labour figures from a broad range of factions, from Tony Blair-era veterans, Starmer allies and lawmakers on the left of the party, said the mood was low. Several Labour MPs and aides told Bloomberg they were surprised by how poorly Starmer and Reeves were performing and questioned whether they even had a plan for power or a way to communicate it. No! They never had a plan. What made you think they had a plan? You'd think that the Tony Blair-era veterans, right, would understand what they were doing by purging the left, like they always wanted to do but never did, and would understand that that was going to take so much work it would get in the way of them actually having a plan for government in those 4 years when they were being cheered on by the press, and indeed were providing basically nothing in terms of policy documentation in the run-up to the election. I read it. The speech's bumpy landing led some Labour insiders to question whether Starmer and Reeves would survive until the next election, a suggestion that would have been borderline unfathomable just a few months ago. Mr. Wickham from Bloomberg literally asked any leftist from a year and a half ago whether they thought Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves would last the term. Ask me from 2021 if I thought a Keir Starmer premiership would last a long time. We all would have told you no. We know who he is. We know what he's about. We know he's empty. We know he's soulless. We know that he's a monster. We know that he has no plan. We know that he has no vision. We know that he doesn't care. We know that he's only there as a prime minister by accident, the accidental prime minister. We all could have told you exactly this. It's only unfathomable if you're a lobby journalist and you're impressed by somebody carrying a briefcase. The only way you could possibly think that Starmer would have to be replaced by somebody else from the Labour Together Politburo because of how soporifically rubbish he is at politics. The only way that you think that that's unfathomable is if you can literally be impressed by somebody gingling keys at you as long as they wear a nice suit and have a smart haircut and say a bunch of managerial waffle that means nothing to the general public. Though there were warning signs in Labour's landslide election victory in July, which delivered a huge parliamentary majority despite relatively low popular support, the government's early stumbles have been striking. Reeves's tax-raising budget, which angered business groups, farmers and pensioners, came after she was accused of denting growth with doom-laden rhetoric. I mean, it wasn't even necessarily the tax rises that were people's problem. People didn't really care about the tax rises. It was the cuts. The cuts were the problem. It was the cuts to the winter fuel payment. It was the increase in the price of the buses. Real things, real tangible effects on normal, everyday working people in this country, right? There's only so few farmers and business groups who you can anger with slight changes to tax policy. But people everywhere will get angry if they think that their nanny is going to go and be cold at winter because they've had their fuel payment taken away. It's such terrible, terrible optics, awful politics from people who think that they can vibes their way into electoral success by pretending that they can cut to try and rebuke this idea of Labour turning the spending taps on. Again, it's performative guff is what it is. It was the last thing Labour needed, especially with Starmer's poll rating slumping and the Prime Minister struggling to move beyond allegations of cronyism and the scandal-hit departures of his top aide and cabinet member. To be sure, Starmer's allies counter that it's still early in his 5-year term and that his parliamentary majority will allow him to do things that shift the narrative. The Conservatives left an unenviable inheritance, people close to the Premier said, including unfunded spending commitments, record immigration, a faltering health service and prison overcrowding that forced the government into taking the politically toxic decision to release some inmates early. And of course, this is all true. They were dealt a terrible hand by the last government. They were dealt a terrible hand by 14 years of terrible cutbacks and awful privatisations. And whilst we're not getting as many awful privatisations, there's still problems with West Streeting. You know, they tried to bring the railways back into public ownership, but have they properly changed the narrative on public spending and the public realm? They haven't. Again, tinkering around the edges will not fix the problems that were caused by the type of governance the Conservatives were engaging in, that you've barely broken from, that you've barely changed your position on. In his speech, Starmer stuck to his messaging about fixing the foundations and restoring economic stability as a prerequisite for ramping up more exciting things like infrastructure spending and house building. We took really tough decisions in the budget and we did them early and we stabilised the economy, Starmer said in his BBC interview broadcast on Friday. Referring to one of his milestones on improving living standards, he said, "I want people to feel better off straight away, feel better off in the sense of more money in their pocket, feel better off because they've got a secure job and that they know it's guaranteed to give them money they need." Yet for many in Labour, the speech was an example of a managerial and technocratic tone that frustrates even some of Starmer's supporters. An ally of Blair, the 3-time election winner, said Starmer risked echoing the mistakes of Joe Biden and the US Democratic candidate Kamala Harris by not taking voters with him. Emmanuel Macron's struggles in France underscore the danger of being seen as out of touch, the person said. In the UK, Brexit campaigner Nigel Farage is itching to emulate his friend Donald Trump's achievements, and that should be the warning sign. The failures of the Harris campaign, the failures of Macron. Whilst Biden and Harris definitely had better economic policy than Emmanuel Macron, Macron is making himself public enemy number one in France, right? You thought people were angry with Joe Biden over the Afghanistan pullout and some benefit programs closing early before the election that didn't get renewed. Think how furious the people of France are with an increase in the retirement age, and then Michel Barnier doing 40 billion euros of austerity as soon as he gets appointed as a minority prime minister from the party that came in 4th place. If you think that you can sensible vibes your way into being popular, and you look at Emmanuel Macron's fixing the foundations of the budget with Michel Barnier as Prime Minister, and you look how utterly held in contempt both of those people are, you don't understand the political era that we are currently living in. The Liberals, both inside politics and out, have convinced themselves that the Britain's populist moment is over. That without Sturgeon, without Johnson, without Corbyn, there isn't going to be any more populism. Well, you've gotten rid of all of the left populism. You've got rid of the chummy right-wing populism of Boris Johnson. And you've got the nasty and malicious populism of Nigel Farage and Reform UK, right? You could have had measured populism from Boris Johnson. At least he cared about climate change and LGBTQ plus people. Nigel Farage's central campaign is abandoning net zero and screwing over trans people, right? You could have had something approaching acceptable right-wing populism. Well, at least he built some hospitals. But now we're staring down the barrel of Nigel Farage. Well done, Liberals. Good to hear. Dismissing Keir Starmer's speech as word salad, the person said the Premier did not appear to understand that a key part of the job was communicating and not just administrating. They expressed despair at the various missions and first steps and priorities, and now milestones, they said, made the government policy look simultaneously piecemeal and hard to understand. Again, it's true that he is being seen as an administrator and not as a communicator, because that's what his job was at the DWP, as Director of Public Prosecutions. Although it's very interesting in all of this discussion, no one mentions the 10 pledges, do they? 2 priorities, 3 foundations, 5 missions, 6 first steps and 6 milestones. They never mention the 10 pledges though, do they? It's almost like they all agree and they all knew that it was all a bunch of lies from the start. What a surprise. Even centre-left think tanks, typically supportive of Labour, said they were underwhelmed by the speech. While the Resolution Foundation welcomed the focus on living standards, it also said that lifting them was the bare minimum for any functioning government. The IPPR said Britain needs transformative change, not incremental improvement. Boldness was missing, Anna McShane, director of the New Britain Project think tank, told Bloomberg. What a surprise. Again, because the Labour right never wanted to transform anything. Remember that person from the Labour conference talk about Labour students? The people who get into the Labour right don't actually care about politics. They like the idea of politics. They want to be politicians, but they don't have any convictions. They don't have any vision. And that's why Nigel Farage will beat Keir Starmer in 2029 if this continues, because he is a man with conviction and vision. They just happen to be really horrible. Some Labour MPs said they want more inspiring policies on the economy and public services, and fewer consultations that risk kicking reforms into the long grass. Reeves' next budget and spending review due next year should show more imagination, they said, warning that they would not support deep cuts to welfare payments or departmental budgets. And that's the thing, you know, we have talked a lot on this channel about the idea of quangos and inshallah. There are policies that we know works and you can do them immediately. You don't have to have a consultation and a focus group and a quango and a working arrangement and a task force to be able to spend a year to find out what the charities and NGOs are already telling you is the case. One called on Starmer to appoint a senior economic policy advisor to scrutinise the Chancellor's decisions. They accused the Premier of outsourcing economic policy to Reeves and failing to block controversial decisions, such as removing cold weather energy payments from most pensioners. Similarly, the person said Starmer's office needed a senior foreign policy aide amid criticism about his overseas trips and separate speech on Britain's place in the world last Monday that was seen as lacking direction. Aides also questioned whether Starmer had surrounded himself with yes-men. While allies of the Premier's new Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, said he's brought about some improvements since taking over from Sue Gray, ministers has yet to see much evidence of that, some officials said. Several also accused people around Starmer of behaving like control freaks. This is what you wanted! This is literally what you fucking wanted. This is exactly what you people fucking wanted. You monsters in the press, you bellends in the press, you absolute dick splashers in the press. This is literally what you wanted. You wanted somebody to take control of the party. You gave him endless rope for him to hang the people on the left of the party that you wanted out of politics and to be treated like persona non grata for the rest of time. You literally wanted this man in power in the position that he's in to ensure that he was a control freak. This is what you fucking wanted. This is literally what you wanted. And to say that he's outsourcing decisions of policy to Rachel Reeves, I'm not surprised, because Keir Starmer does know fuck all about the economy. He knows nothing. He had to be given a crash course on how economics works by Lord Faulkner on day fucking one. On fucking day one. Because he hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. Again, he's never wanted to be Prime Minister. He was an empty suit for Labour together. And she's been desperate to cut the winter fuel payment ever since 2014 when she was trying to out austerity fucking George Osborne. Or interestingly, this article, when they ask for a senior foreign policy aide, maybe one that has a different position on fucking Israel. What's interesting though is when they say that Starmer has surrounded himself with yes men, Keir Starmer is the yes man. Keir Starmer is doing what he's told. Morgan McSweeney is the shadow Prime Minister who makes all the decisions that Keir Starmer follows. Keir Starmer has always been the yes man. He's always been the person who does what he's told. Some Labour strategists warn the demand for better and more powerful messaging from Downing Street will only increase. They pointed to right-wing agitators on Elon Musk's Twitter social media platform, as well as posts by the owner himself, potentially undermining the administration. Labour won their massive majority because people wanted change. Our polling showed most people felt nothing in Britain worked anymore. To turn that around will need more than just a change in management. Imagine, right? Imagine if at any point over the last 4 fucking years, I had said on my incredibly popular YouTube channel, No Justice MTG, the very phrase, people need a change in ideology rather than a change in management. I may have said that phrase 1,000 million times over the course of the last 4 years. Weird how the highly paid morons in our political and media class only just cottoning onto that shit now. Incredible that they're only just cottoning onto this stuff. Maybe they didn't meet these kind of people when the 51% of them went to fucking private school who are this level of vitriol towards the political class in this country and the level of political fallout from the failure of governance over the past 14 years. But what am I to know? I've not done PPE at Oxford, so clearly I'm not the one who should be having their opinions being treated as rote on this. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for memberships. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.